Welcome to ABA Inside Track, the podcast that's like reading in your car, but safer. I'm your host, Robert Perry Cruz, and with me as always are my fabulous co-hosts.
Hey, Rob, it's me, Diana.
And it's me, Jackie.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's been a little while since we've recorded in the same room, so it's a real special treat to get the song
Thanks.
right next to
I've
me.
been thinking about it as I was making my sourdough starter.
Oh, yeah?
I was singing along to the instructions, trying to figure out how I was going to introduce myself today.
Hey, Jackie, do you think you sing more? Do you think you sing more often than you used to?
Oh, totes.
Do you think you sing more on key, less on key?
Oh, less on key.
Are you looking at percentages? I feel like there's got to be a good measurement system
I don't think so.
for us to talk. No, there's got to
I
figure
doubt it.
out. No.
I doubt it.
And not just percentages, not just numbers, but I want to see something where I can see,
Those aren't going to give you the full picture.
No, I want the full picture. I want to see, are you doubling how much singing you do? Is
Yeah.
it decreasing? Just really quickly in a way that it's the same for everybody.
Right. I only have subjective measurements of people telling me to stop.
I feel like there's got to be a better way.
Right.
Well, lucky for us, we're hosting a podcast right now. And that podcast is on behavior analysis and behavior analytic research, where every week we pick a topic related to the field and we're just asking questions, folks, just asking questions. And this week we're asking questions about how we could better measure Jackie in a standard way to see if there's any celeration in her singing data.
Ooh.
And since that means we must be talking about celeration charts, we then looked at each other and said, we don't know a lot about celeration charts, but fortunately for us, we have a very special guest who has joined us, who has promised in person, he will make it all clear and easy. And we are joined by Jared Van. Jared, thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. As someone who's been listening since I was a wee behavior interventionist, trying to learn the science of behavior, and now I have the opportunity to share some information with y'all. That's just so exciting. I'm like fangirling out.
Oh, jeez.
Man.
Well, you know
We're
what they
very
say.
excited, too.
Yeah, don't meet your heroes. We're going to embarrass ourselves with our acceleration chart knowledge. And
Can I just embarrass myself, start it off?
Yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't be an episode if you didn't.
Well, Jared, just so you know, and listeners,
I want to paint a picture. Jackie's kind of settling back.
I'm a professor.
Mhm.
If you didn't know, it's like my side.
your day job.
No, that's
Yeah.
actually my side job. This is my real job. No, just kidding. Opposite. And when I have to go teach Celeration, it is not great.
Mhm.
So this is going to be so helpful for me, because usually I'm like, just read it. You'll figure it out. Bye. And I gloss over it because I've been so scared to do it, because I never learned. I think that is how my professor did it with me.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, standard Celeration, okay. And
They
so
were like, there's one question on the BACB exam
right
about it, so
here it
you got a
is.
25% chance.
And so this, when the gang came back from Baba and said that they were gonna have some come on to talk about standard Celeration, I got one half of my body got excited and one half of my body started sweating, getting nervous.
Mm.
Truth be told.
Wow, like Two-Face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know who that is, but yes.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to try to
Two-faced.
make it easy. And I want to say that it is very courageous of you to even still teach it, even though you're afraid and nervous. Like, some people just say, I'm not going to say anything about it and just move on. So that's really awesome.
You
know
know,
what?
let's see if I've done a good job. So after I've talked to you, we'll see if I actually understood it or if I made up.
You're
And
probably selling yourself a little short.
I don't
Because
know.
you usually do quite a good job on those things.
Who knows? But yes, that is.
Well, we're here to
I'm
learn.
excited about it.
That's right. I know for me, when I see standard acceleration charts, especially with you get the blue printed out paper, it's like I might as well be looking at blueprints. It's like I can't build this. This house is not going to be built. I guess I'm going to move on and leave it to somebody else. But I know, especially at Baba, and talking with Jared, a lot of the talks at Baba this year were about precision teaching and acceleration charts. And I'm very excited about precision teaching. And it feels, and we'll talk about this, it feels like if you're doing precision teaching and you don't want to use a acceleration chart, you're sort of missing a big chunk of the power you're going to get from precision teaching. So, and full disclosure, I did do there was one of the speakers at Baba did like a free webinar for folks. So I cheated and I did a little extra Celeration chart prepping, so I didn't look totally foolish in front of Jared today. And Jared had also already shown me some of the basics at Baba.
That's
So
right.
I've got double. We'll see if the third time it finally all clicks together. I know when I was writing some questions, I did use some terminology, and I was very proud of myself. So hopefully it'll keep going from there. So Jared was so kind to share some articles he thought would be kind of good foundational pieces for us to be sort of discussing as we talk more generally about standard celeration charts. So Diana, what articles are we going to be reviewing today?
Okay, so we have 3 articles that we will touch on today, and they are, in no particular order, Behavioral Fluency, Evolution of a New Paradigm by Binder. That was published in the Behavior Analyst, 1996. Can This Marriage Be Saved? Self-Management of Destructive Inners. Well, I'm sure we'll discuss that. That was by Cooper, published in the Journal of Precision Teaching back in 1991.
Same Cooper.
Yeah. This is like that is like my new favorite article now. I just read that. I was like, I can't believe this was an article. It's
really laying it all out.
So exciting.
We'll talk about it. Okay, and then Precision Teaching by Teachers for Children. And that was by Lindsley, published in Teaching Exceptional Children, 1990. This is the 90s edition.
Yeah.
Wow.
Was it a 90s song?
That does sound like an intro music to some.
It was a semi-Seinfeld sound
Yeah,
you
you
had kind of going.
See me, but I'm wearing a full windbreaker right now with matching pants and a matching zip-up top.
Oh, I'm going exact opposite you, so we wouldn't be friends. I'm wearing Doc Martens, a flannel. I've got some goth hair going on, a choker, and black eyeliner.
Okay.
These are very 90s references you've
Thank
made.
you.
Congratulations,
That was
everybody.
me, by the way, except for the black hair. I tried to dye it and it turned green.
No. Okay. Sounds good. All right. So, Jared, for someone to not only want to go to the trouble of explaining celeration charts to folks, come on a podcast to talk about it, you make instructional videos about it, which, again, people, and a lot of people have seen the videos, even at Baba, people come by and they'd be like, I love your video. You're getting a lot of people. Congrats. I was like, wow, this is what's up with
this TikTok?
Celeration charts? They seem like they're your calling or your passion. How did this come to be? Why don't you introduce yourself to the audience and tell us how you got to this point in your Celeration chart? What's the adoration, love, passion,
Journey,
yes.
Fame,
all of it. Now it's behind the music. Talking about 90s.
Yeah, I mean, right now I'm a PhD student at Penn State University under Dr. Richard Cabina, who wrote the Precision Teaching book. And that kind of ties into my story of how I got here. I'm going to go way back. As a kid, I did terrible in school. In middle and high school, I switched schools in middle school one time from public to private, and then I switched schools from public to private in high school as well, because I was not doing well and they were not able to give me the support I needed to be able to be successful. And my parents had to fight and advocate for me to be able to do well enough to pass and to succeed. And they would say, oh, this kid, Jared, he's not even going to go to college. Forget graduate school or whatever. You get this man some vocational training. And now I'm a PhD student here because when I was learning about behavior analysis, when I became a behavior interventionist, in one of my classes, we learned about precision teaching. And we had to do these things called SAF meds, which are cards where you flip them and you read them and you have to do a certain amount in a certain amount of time. And then one of my professors had worked at this place called Morningside Academy, where they do precision teaching. And he said, one day, I'll never forget this, Dr. Eric Carlson, he said, I could tell that a student was getting sick by the changes on the standard celeration chart. And right before I would call it, and then the next day they would be sick and they would be out. And I was like, oh my God, like you can tell that with this chart? Okay, I need to learn more about this. If you could tell that sensitivity with this chart, then I got to figure this out. So I started deep diving and I bought the book, the Precision Teaching book by Dr. Richard Cabina. And he just so happened to be coming to my school to give a talk or a workshop on precision teaching. So I asked my supervisor, I'm like, hey, I know you really need me. I know we got a really tough client, but can I please go to this at my school and get some time off? And luckily I had one of the greatest supervisors at the time. And she was like, yeah, sure, go for it and bring back the knowledge and let us know what you learned. And I was there, and I brought my book, and I was like, "Hey, could you sign this for me?"
That was my follow-up question, Jared. I was like, "Did you get?" Because I was like, "Because now you're learning with him, but it's like it must be awkward as a mentor to say, "Can you sign my book?" But okay, you'd met him previously when it was still that.
Yeah. So I said, could you sign it for me? And then I found him on Instagram, and I DM'd him, and I said, "Do you know anywhere I can go to get a PhD in precision teaching?" And he said, "Well, I'm a professor at Penn State. You could try to apply here, and we can see if you get in, and I'll work with you to improve your knowledge and understanding of precision teaching." And through a DM on IG, I am now a PhD student.
Wow, I love that.
That's a great
That's
story.
excellent. Folks, if you meet someone, it's like Skinner always said, you find something you're interested in, your passion, you chase it down, and sometimes it's just as easy as like a couple clicks here and there. And I mean, I know you have to do more than just
So easy.
send a message on Instagram to get into a PhD program, Jared.
Just slide into the DM.
Yeah. I mean, but interestingly enough, Binder, who we'll talk about later, he sent old school mail to Dr. Skinner, and that's how he became Skinner's PhD student, by just sending him mail and saying that he was interested in learning under him. So it's like 21st century version.
Yeah.
Oh, so when you write like another version of a precision teaching book 10, 20 years from now, you'll talk about the cyclical nature of that in the foreword, I'm guessing. Or like,
Yep.
Oh, that's excellent. So, Jared, when you're done with your program, you'll have a doctorate in just like education with a focus on precision teaching, or it is specifically in precision teaching?
It's in special education. Yeah, with definitely a focus on precision teaching. Absolutely.
Oh, excellent. That is I cannot wait to see all the work that comes out of that, because as someone who has worked in schools for many, many years, I see a lot of faults in the way education is done. And the more I read about precision teaching, the more, and there's got to be a better way. And I'm like, oh, wait, there is. It's right over here. It's been researched for a very long time. I don't quite get the disconnect. And I know that's not our focus today, but I bet we'll talk about it some.
From Rob.
I got so many hot takes. We got another education episode coming out in a couple. We're going to do in a couple weeks, and I already started writing hot take questions, followed by like, "This is the nicer question. If you'd rather do the nicer version, take one."
Well, I mean, this is me just trying to like save my inner child. You know what I mean? I struggled when I was a kid, and I want to make schools so that it's, one, enjoyable, and two, kids are learning and able to succeed, so they don't have to have the experience I did when they're in school.
Yeah,
I like that.
Okay. Well, let's get started just by painting the picture, painting the word picture. We're talking about standard celeration charts. We're talking about precision teaching, but it's hard to talk about standard celeration charts, because this is an audio medium. So you'll probably want to looking at some articles yourself after listening, or maybe if you're not driving while listening, just to have some visual reference. But when we're talking about standard celeration charts, Jared, like, how do you describe them, their use, what they look like, how we ground sort of our vision? Because I always sort of looked at them as like XY graphs myself, which is part of it, but really misses so much, I think, of the power that can be described by looking at all of the other facets of the document. It's like, so what do we need to know? What are the key concepts? What are the key pieces we need to be focused on when we're looking at our chart?
Okay, well, first, it's blue, which is really weird and different. And there's actually a reason why it's blue. One, when you drop dots or when you drop your data, you don't want it to be the same color, and especially with all those lines squeezed together. And they tried multiple different colors, and they used science to indicate or find out which color resulted in the least amount of eye fatigue and the most accuracy in dropping your dots. So they found that they liked green most, but blue actually was the one that was scientifically the best one to use. So they printed it in blue.
I bet they were like, oh, I wish
Why
it was
not green, right?
Yeah.
We gotta go with the data.
Yeah. Yep, and that's going to be a story throughout, going with the data, having to go with the data even though you don't want to. So then all these lines that you see going across, it may seem intimidating, but they're just day lines. All those vertical lines, every one is a day. The thick blue lines are Sundays, and every day in between is Monday through Saturday. And then there's a way to kind of conceptualize the way that the left vertical axes go up. And there's a nice little rhyme that Michael Mahoney came up with. Big numbers that start with 1 tell us what to count by and what to count from. So If you look at the 1, you go to the next line, and that's 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 10. And then if you go to the 10, you go 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, all the way to 100. And you go to 100, and then 100, 200, 300, 400. So that's the way that you kind of can conceptualize and count. And there's a very specific reason as to why we count like that. This is not an equal interval graph like most people are used to. Most people are used to 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. And there's a very important reason for why we don't use an equal interval graph. Equal interval graphs count absolute value, whereas this graph, a ratio chart, graphs or charts of relative value, relative amounts. So an easy way to understand that is, let's say me and Beyonce. Beyonce has about 316 million followers on Instagram. I have about 1,700. If I get a new follower, thank you. If I get a new follower, I'm going to for sure notice. If she gets a new follower, she's not really going to notice. If we both got one follower, that's an absolute value of 1 plus 1. But relative to how much we actually have or we began with, it matters substantially because the change is different. Another example real quick, because I like to give multiple examples, is let's say I got $100. I'm going to be ecstatic. I'm going to Mrs. Fields. I'm getting the icy and the chocolate chip cookie. But if Elon Musk is given $100, he's probably not even going to touch it because of the amounts relative to the money that we both have in our bank accounts. Right. Just for perspective, I do not have Elon Musk money. So I'm grabbing that $100 and I'm taking it to the bank.
You're going to Miss Fields. I'm coming with you.
Can we go to Orange Julius also, right? Since it's the 90s?
Oh, yeah, before the 90s, yes.
Yeah, and so like if you wanted to graph your followers and Beyonce's followers and you tried to do it on a regular old chart, you almost wouldn't be able to, right? Yeah. Because your y-axis would be so stretched out that...
Exactly.
I mean, no offense. I mean, we're in the same boat, right? So like her followers would be way up here at the very top and yours, any change that you might see in yours would be at the bottom and you wouldn't be able to discern any change in your data, right? Or anybody's data.
Exactly.
So it would be grand of a scale. Yeah.
Exactly. So we want to understand change relative to where it was because behavior change is all relative to where it started. So let's say you're looking at 1 words per minute to 21 words per minute. Look at that change versus someone going from 60 to 80. Absolute is plus 20. But there's actually a times 20 with the 1 to 21 and a times 1.3 with the 60 to 80. I know I might be losing some people with the numbers. It's a lot of numbers. But basically what I'm saying is the relative change is more, let me say this differently. You can better see relative change with the ratio chart. And equal interval graphs underestimate performances at low frequencies and overestimate performances at high frequencies. And because of that, you're not able to make good data-based timely decisions when you're using an equal interval graph. And it's not equitable to your learners because equal interval graphs assume all behavior is the same, all environments, all conditions, all behaviors are the same, whereas ratio graphs ratio graphs, they say, no, they're not all the same. Everybody starts and has a different environmental history, and we need to respect that. And we do so by showing the relative change.
All right. So we've got some definite pros to the use of the Celeration charts. And I think when we talk about sort of education, we talk about precision teaching, we really can't talk about one without the other. Would you say, or are you able to sort of separate the two? I feel like they're intertwined and kind of in looking in the articles, like Lindsay's article and Binder's article, they sort of just keep throwing both together. Precision teaching, standard Celeration chart. Am I over swooshing the two concepts, or are they really?
You can't have that.
I think that the Venn diagram is a circle. I don't think that you can be precision teaching without the standard Celeration chart. It is the engine that drives precision teaching.
Well put.
Yeah. So, Jared, I guess I always come back to this, and I talked to you a little bit about this at Baba, of Why does it seem so hard to use the standard Celeration chart? I know you mentioned you've seen children as young as 5. I think there were some second graders with like 19 Celeration charts mentioned in, I think, I might have the Binder article. So, and I'm sitting here saying, like, I did a practice one once and I was sweating bullets just doing it. What is it about the standard Celeration chart that just seems so insurmountable and intimidating?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question. I think one of the big things is one thing that a lot of people outside of the precision teaching community don't know is that we have what we call chart parents, or people that train the others that to learn how to chart. So like my chart parent would be Dr. Kabina because he taught me how to chart. So a lot of people have mentors that are like, oh, hey, you want to try? Okay, let me show you how to do it. When I was at Morningside Academy for their 3-week summer institute, there was a student who was new, and all students chart their own performance on the standard Celeration chart. So the teacher said, oh, they team up in like teams, and they say, oh, go show him how to do it. So I scooted over and I wanted to see what he was going to say. And he's like, oh yeah, so we use this little funky chart to go ahead and drop dots. So what you're going to do is you're going to find your performance, and you find the 1. If you have a 1, put it on the 1. If you have 2, you just move up 1 line. So they have someone kind of coaching them through how to do it. And if you don't have that, you're going to do a lot of reading, a lot of watching of videos to try to understand it. But one thing that we know about learning is we learn by doing. And we need either repeated reinforced practice or we need feedback. Without either of those, it's going to be hard to know if you're doing it correctly.
So I'm not so great at my standard Celeration chart because I don't have someone in my current non-podcast related setting talking about standard Celeration. And if I did, I'd still need to do it. I couldn't just be like, well, I read the book. I read Precision Teaching. I talked to Jared for like an hour. Like, I'm probably good. Right?
But we know from experience, the training without practice and feedback worked great. All you need to do is be lectured at.
It didn't for other people. I thought maybe I'd be the exception that proved the rule when it came to standard Celeration charts. Alas, no.
I'm just kidding, of course. ESP is the way to go.
No, it was one when I did sit and have like a couple minutes either to see Jared doing it when I tried to do it sort of this kind of online quick workshop. It did make more sense in terms of the setup, in terms of the use of the standard Celeration chart. And I think we'll talk about the benefits. And you've already mentioned some of them already, Jared, in terms of those benefits. What are some other terms that we need to know? So we're gonna put something on the chart. We're gonna drop dots. We're gonna measure some behavior. Maybe we should take kind of a step back to the history, because it seems like the standard Celeration chart has been around forever, even though it's not necessarily given the same weight in maybe BCBA coursework than it would have been 40 years ago, 30 years ago. What are some of the kind of like developmental pieces that sort of led to this is the chart that we're going to be using in our labs?
So Ogden Lindsley wanted to make sure that there was some type of standard chart that everybody can use for their behavior. So he worked together with his students to try to figure out some type of chart. They looked into different types of charts from different fields, and they found semi-logarithmic charts and ratio charts, and they kind of mixed and mashed and iterated over and over again to try to figure out, how are we going to get this to work? And eventually they came up with the one that you would see if you Google standard Celeration chart today. And there are 6 cycles, and it will be able to chart behavior anywhere from 1 per day to 1,000 per minute.
Wow.
Whew.
That is excellent.
That makes
pretty
me sweaty.
I know.
1,000 of something per minute?
What even goes 1,000 per minute?
Tap dancing.
No,
like seriously. Tap
That's what
dancing
they use it for?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's a precision teaching article on tap dancing, but precision teacher Amy Evans found that there might be a tap dancer from the past that was like the fastest tap dancer that might be able to like literally go off the chart. But that's like the only human behavior that might be able to go off the chart. Other than that, it's like hummingbirds and their like wings fluttering.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I think, Jared, we almost talked about the tap dancing precision teaching article, but You needed to know your standard chart. So maybe we'll come back to it. We didn't say we want to do precision teaching again in the future. So maybe we'll revisit now with some more information.
There you go.
All right, so you can use it for tap dancing, certainly for education. I mean,
and you can go up or down.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you want to go down when it's behaviors that occur that don't occur within a minute. So let's say there's behavior that's happening once every 2 minutes. Then you would go down. Some behavior, they say that some behavior lives below the chart. Let's say, for instance, maybe aggressive behavior in school. It's not happening every minute, but it's maybe happening once per school day or twice per school day. Mm-hmm. That kind of behavior might live below the chart, and you'd be able to see change in that behavior depending upon your intervention and see if that intervention is effective via the change in the chart.
Okay.
Cool.
So when we sort of talk about how the chart was being used, how it was developed by Ogden Lindsley's students and by a variety of practitioners, it seems like a very practitioner-driven usage of the chart. And I know the article that you shared where sort of Lindsley was going over some history. He talked about kind of 4 policies that sort of came into using precision teaching and therefore using the standard Celeration chart. Do you mind kind of going over those 4 policies and how relevant they still are today? I know we're doing 90s articles, but we're in the 2020s. So is it still the same? Are there 10 new policies now, or is it pretty straightforward from there to now?
No, well, I mean, those policies are still important today. We want to monitor frequency daily. It's very important that we, use frequency. You can use other measures on the standard Celeration chart, like you can use duration, latency, what have you, but frequency is the gold standard. If you know the frequency of the behavior, you really can understand the behavior well, going all the way back to Skinner. And you want to try to monitor it daily. The more data, the better. And you can really check sensitive changes. They usually would be like, oh, if the behavior isn't on track within 2 days, then we need to make a change. That's the important part, those timely database decisions. Number 2 is use self-recording. The Ogden Lindsley really wanted people to record their own behavior so they could be a part of their learning and take control of their own learning. And it's really powerful when you really get to do it because kids really care about their charts. They like to put them up. They like to show their parents. They're like, look, this is me. This is my high score. This is me going up. This is my personal best. And they love it. And they take pride in it. And it's showing their behavior growing and whatever behavior that they don't want decaying. So using that self-recording can be super important to make sure that the learners take control of their own learning. Next is use standard charts to display major changes. The standard charts meaning the standard Celeration chart. Use that chart. You want to
don't
make
make
sure
up a new chart like my students used to. Says
Yeah, no. We came up with this one. Let's use this one. Let's make standards. Like any science has standards, and one of the important standards on this chart that I really want to hone in on is the fact that there are days across that bottom axis. There are 140 calendar days, and that's because that's around the same time as one full semester. And he wanted to make sure we don't want to use sessions. This is a very important reason why we don't want to use sessions. I might throw this to y'all. Do y'all know why it might be bad to use sessions instead of actual units of time?
I mean, is it due to the session's sort of non-standard length of time it could be? I mean, you'd hope to keep that somewhat standard, but we've all been in those sessions where it's like everything's going great, so we did another 20 minutes, or it was a disaster, so we ended early that day.
Exactly. A session is not a real unit of time. We can't know how long a session is or how short, how many sessions happened in one day. I mean, how much time elapsed between one session and the next. There are so many variables that you're not accounting for when you're using sessions. And when you actually use sessions, it's no longer a time series data display. So using sessions is really something that they wanted to get away from, and they wanted to use standard units and make sure our science, behavior science, remains a natural science. And they do so by using calendar days. Finally, number 4 is child knows best. And this one is like a crazy story where he was working in the lab with Skinner, and he was looking at his cumulative record, and he's like, this rat isn't doing the same thing as your rat, Dr. Skinner. What's going on? What's wrong with the rat? And then Dr. Skinner was like, well, the rat knows best. That's why he's still in there. Follow what he says. And Ogden Lindsley was so dumbfounded just by the fact that this man is not so arrogant as to be like, oh, something must be wrong with what you're doing or blah, blah, blah.
Right.
It's like, no, like we're learning through this inductive measure of behavior analysis, and we're learning through the rat. The rat is teaching us. So that is where the child knows best comes from, because the child knows best, and it's a way to describe the inductive approach to behavior research.
Mm-hmm. So again, these 4 policies, when you're looking at modern precision teaching, or what seems like a resurgence in precision teaching in a lot of areas, although perhaps it was just not on my radar based on sort of where we are in the world, they still hold true. Like, not much has really changed in terms of those 4 policies.
No, I mean, the principles of behavior haven't changed, as neither has these policies.
So before we get into some of the other kind of examples and settings and talk about sort of the setup or what it might look like sort of as in a practicality, I know one of the phrases that I see a lot when we're looking at precision teaching, or we're looking at, we're going to drop some dots on learning channels, which just makes me think of TV. And then I think, this is hard and I don't want to learn this. I want to watch TV. So I get off track. So help me out, Jared. Give me a little bit more information about what's spoken about in education when we're talking about those learning channels, and how we're going to use the standard acceleration chart to keep track of our data on the channels.
Okay, perfect. So first of all, you talked about dropping dots. I don't know if we talked about what those symbols mean. So a dot is an acceleration point, something that you want to increase. And you drop a dot when you want that behavior to increase. An X will be dropped when you want that behavior to decrease. So like dots would be corrects, X's would be incorrects, and you want to display both of those on the chart. Then you have a timing bar, because you want to know how long you were counting for so that somebody can replicate it. And those are like the 3 major things that you want to see. But then when we talk about learning channels are sensory ins and outs for us to describe behavior. So let's say right now, this is a podcast where I hear and say. You tell me something, or you ask me a question and I hear and say. It's an easy way to describe behavior without a lot of hullabaloo. I mean, there's a very specific formula called a pinpoint plus that precision teachers use instead of an operational definition, because operational definitions are often just a bunch of words slapped together. They might include 2 or more behaviors. They have a discrepancy when 2 people are looking at them. Dr. Kabina actually did research to determine operational definitions have like a 75% chance 2 people are going to agree, and then pinpoint plus is going to have a 99% chance that people are going to agree. So, for instance, one of the best ways I can describe why it's important to use a pinpoint plus is a lot of times parents will say, yeah, my kid knows how to read. What does that mean? What does that mean? There are a lot of ways that we can define reading. So can they see and say a letter? Can they hear and write their letters? Can they see and then like read it to themselves? There's a lot of ways to show literacy, and we describe it through these different ins and outs. And all of the ins on these learning channels are ways that sensory information comes into our body. So you can hear, taste, touch, smell, sniff, feel both tactily, and then you can feel like emotions. And then also there's this one that's just think or free, because sometimes we do behaviors that cannot be seen, and that's just where we put think or free. Then we have behavioral outputs, where we can write, we can tap, we can push, we can pull, we can do a whole lot of different behaviors that other people can see. And when we combine the 2, we have our ins and outs of our sensory information.
Okay.
Do you have to always call it a pinpoint plus, or can it just be a pinpoint?
A pinpoint plus.
Question?
No, it's a great question, actually. Pinpoint plus includes a learning channel, a movement cycle, and the context. A pinpoint just has a movement cycle and the context. There is no learning channel when you only have a pinpoint.
Do you want to be a BCBA?
Sure, we all do.
Now you can come to Regis College in Weston, Mass. to get your graduate degree.
Choose from any one of these courses.
Masters of Science in Applied Behavior Analysis.
Masters of Science in Special Education.
dual degree in special ed and ABA.
Or be eligible for your postmaster's certificate.
You can complete your degree and be ready to sit for the exam in 2 years. And our 2017 grads had a 100% pass rate on the BACB exam.
Come enjoy practicum placement support, ethics mini handbooks, PhD level professors, small class sizes, and a service trip to Iceland.
If interested, don't delay. Supplies are limited. Learn more at regiscollege.edu.
Again, that's www.regiscollege.edu, regiscollege.edu. One more time, www.regiscollege.edu.
See you there!
Hey everyone, sorry to pause the conversation, but we just wanted to remind everyone that ABA Inside Track is ACE and QABA approved. By listening to the show, you're able to earn 1 learning credit. All you need to do is finish listening and then go to our website, abainsidetrack.com. Click the Get CEUs button, or you can click the link in the podcast show notes description section on your podcast player. Take you right there. You need some key information about yourself, as well as 2 secret code words that we've hidden in the episode. Here's our first one. It's a special guest code word from Jared Van himself, and it is pinpoint, PINPOINT. Very relevant to a discussion of precision teaching, as well as to many of our discussions about supervisory behaviors. Ooh, it's a good one to know. Pinpoint. All right, let's get back to the show. So you're figuring out, you have something. Let's use a more basic example in terms of where we usually would see, we want to see an increase in, say, well, like word reading or sight word reading, right? So we've got our channel you're going to see and say, and we know we want to see more being read, and we want to see errors about those words happening less and less. And you've decided, all right, I've got my precision teaching, or I've got the way I'm going to teach this skill, and this is kind of where I always get a little confused, sort of not having as much of a background in the precision teaching. There's going to be some amount of teaching, and then at some point, my learner will do their timing, or the two kind of all go together in terms of how that gets presented in the moment. Because I know looking at the articles, it seemed like the teaching could be as wide open as you wanted it to be. What was important was that you were then using the timings to track the student's progress and then determining, all right, this teaching method, no good. This is the one that was good based on how the timings went, based on the line of acceleration.
Yes. So precision teaching can sometimes be confusing by the name. Precision teaching isn't a method of teaching per se, but a system of precise measurement and decision-making to help determine the effects of any intervention or instructional implementation guided by the standard Celeration chart. So when we actually want to use the chart, we're going to say, okay, this kid, we want to see if they can see, say, these sounds or these words. Let's just go with words. So we're going to start a timer because all behavior happens across time. And we can only know if the behavior improves or if it improves in fluency or frequency, the count per time. So we'll say for 1 minute, this kid is going to try to read all the words on this page. And they go. Let's say that they get 20 words in 1 minute. Perfect. Okay. They see, say, 20 words in 1 minute. Now we're going to see if our instruction will increase the number per minute. So the next day, after we've given our instruction, we do the same, we do another timing, and we see, okay, it has that behavior increase. And let's say it goes up to 25. And it's like, oh, great. And we can see and we can measure the change in behavior across time. And that really tells us, is the intervention being effective? And if so, how much?
And I know, I think it was in I forget which article it was in exactly now, but I know there was some examples of students, and maybe you've seen this, where they taught the kids all of the different types of patterns that their data trails could be taking. It's like there was the jaws, and there was what was the other one? There was like
the surface and dive.
Yeah, the surface and dive, and there were all these different terms,
snow plow, and all those. Yeah, I mean, because what we understand is just because corrects increase, it doesn't mean that incorrects decrease. You can read really fast and still have a lot of errors. So we want to go ahead. Sorry.
Do you need? So you have to have both an in and an out. You have to have like a plus and a minus. You have to have
Was the dot and the X,
the
right?
dot and the X, yeah.
Yeah, we call those fair pairs. We want to know not only is the correct behavior increasing, is the incorrect behavior or undesired behavior decreasing as well? Because, like I said, they could both be increasing. But if we don't collect data on both, we don't know. So we want to get as much data as possible. And by looking at those learning pictures, the snowplow, the jaws, the ski crosses, and all those that those kids named, we can determine, is the behavior improving or worsening? And those kids kind of match up their charts with the learning pictures and like, okay, mine's improving or mine's maintaining or it's worsening. And we know that in precision teaching, we have this saying called either we're going to continue or stop and change. It's only one of those two. We never give up on the learner. We just continue or stop and change. Improving, continue. Worsening, stop and change.
All right, so there's no like throw your hands up and quit or like fire yourself and find someone who's better than you. Okay, you just gotta think of something else. That's
I like that.
You can bring in other people, I'm sure,
That's
to
true.
assist. That's always an option.
but you don't throw your papers up and say sorry, kid, and just storm out of the room.
You never give up on the learner.
Oh, good. I don't want to.
Yeah.
I like having these systems to help with that. All right, so that. I feel like when thinking about how to use the standard Celeration chart, I feel like that's the sort of the basic example of it's the CSA reading words and you do some instruction and then you do your timing, instruction and some timing. Can we talk about some other examples that will lead us up to, I think, discussing the Cooper article, which I don't know how many, I mean, I'm sure you've seen tons of cumulative kind of the Celeration charts at this point, Jared. That seems like the weirdest one. So we'll save that one for last. What are some other examples of ways that you would set up your Celeration chart and use it to do timings that goes beyond just, come on, let's practice reading these words?
Well, you can use it for any human performance. We talked about before you can do tap dancing. There's actually a group called Team ABA that works with sports performance. So you can do it with free throws or shots per minute. I kind of used it to determine how many three-pointers Curry made per minute to be able to shoot like Curry. You need to make 25 three-pointers per minute for 5 minutes, so 5 times straight to be able to shoot like Steph Curry. You can also use
sounds very hard.
I mean, if you do your timings every day, Diana, just a short intervention, you'll be in the NBA before
That's
you know
right.
it.
Anything is possible. Behavior can change.
We don't know the training regimen, but we could do our own timings at least.
Exactly, and then you can iterate your training regimen to be able to see, is my behavior improving or worsening?
We'll never give up on you, Diana. That's what Jared's taught us. Say never give up on your 3-point throws.
Yeah, that's
We'll come up with a new
That's
new
very
plan.
cool, though, Jared.
Yeah, no. And then you could even do it with music. I know there's some individuals doing it with music. There's also this thing called the Big 6+6, where precision teachers work with gross and fine motor behavior to help improve like daily living activities, and working with PTs and OTs, PTs being physical therapists in this instance, working with them and collaborating with them can be really awesome and help our learners who are working on those behaviors be able to put their own shirt on, change their bed, open up cabinets or whatever. That's a really good one as well. So any human performance.
And I think, Jared, that was in the Binder article, I believe, talking about some more examples of the 6 and 6. Just sort of, and it seemed like it always feels like when we're talking about these charts, it's this very complicated technology. But in those cases, it seemed like folks who they had something they needed to measure and they just found easy ways to do their timings and to do their counts across whatever span of time was, in that case, I guess, relevant for the task at hand. And I know one of the speakers at BABA talked about using timings and using the Celeration chart to track hand washing, which I never had thought, like, well, I would never use a standard Celeration chart, because I always think of hand washing as, I might think of it as a TA, but I would think of it sort of as like, well, you either washed your hands or you didn't wash your hands, and they're either clean or not clean. I would think about the quality rather than realistically, if it takes you 40 minutes to wash your hands, even though you accurately completed all of the steps, it's not a functional skill.
No, yeah, you're absolutely correct. When we work on doing trials like that, and we're working on creating chains, a lot of times people get lost in the chain, and you're doing backwards chaining, forward chaining. Why isn't this person learning? Sometimes there are parts in the chain that they need to be able to become fluent in, that they're not fluent in. So improving the fluency in those parts of the chain and then putting it all together and letting them go can actually result in incredible changes that you didn't have to do all the steps. You just had to teach them the specific steps to a certain level of fluency, which is accuracy plus speed. And then they're able to just do it because they already have it within their behavioral repertoire at that level, whereas they didn't have it there before.
Mm-hmm. So in a situation like that, where you're looking at fluency, you would do, say, a timing for the completion of the chain, or you could even look at timings of the completion of the various steps within the chain. Depending on what was relevant for the learner.
Yeah, you could do various steps on the portions within the chain. A lot of times, the Big 6+6, it was really important because it described all of the things that you need to be able to do things like if I need to unbutton a shirt, I need to have the pincer grasp, I need to be able to push, pull, all these things. So you can kind of determine which parts of the Big 6+6 are they disfluent in. Let's increase their fluency, and then let's just try to see if they can do it. And a lot of times, it's a lack of fluency in those Big 6+6 parts that are preventing or stopping them from being able to do those chains that we're so interested in them being able to do.
Okay. So a lot of good uses of the standard acceleration chart and certainly precision teaching. I would love to talk, if we can go into a little more depth into Cooper's article on his inners.
Wait, number one, I can't believe his wife allowed this.
Did he get...
Same.
I know.
Did he need her permission though? Because it was his own inners.
No, he didn't. But right, he didn't need her permission. But when she is like, hey, I'm gonna read this and look at the graph about you thinking about other ladies that are other than myself,
non-wives,
non-wives, and destructive feelings toward my family. I mean, I don't know.
Well, it's one thing to take data on your own behavior. It's another to then publish it
for the world to read about for eternity. Because now it's been so long.
It's very.
What's the context here? We should explain.
So, Jared, how did you find? I guess I should ask. How did you find this article? Were you like, I wonder if Cooper ever cheated on his wife? Let's Google that. Oh, precision teaching article. That's so relevant to me. How did this come?
He didn't. That wasn't
no.
Yeah, what happened?
No, he didn't. Well, I mean, he didn't say he did. It was his thoughts. He has a great marriage. At least as of 1991 when this was published. Here. Ironically, did his wife leave him after this one got published? We don't know. How did you find this?
Let's not throw slander on the boy. We all know that we have thoughts and feelings that we don't necessarily want. And he recognized that, and he tried to find a way to fix it. I found this because I was doing a literature review on trying to find every single article where individuals used precision teaching and charted their own behavior. So I had to go through a bunch of different journals, and I was going through the Precision Teaching Journal. They stopped the Precision Teaching Journal, I think, at 2012. And so I went through every single one and determined whether or not they were charting performance themselves or they were having somebody else chart their own performance.
That is a graduate student task right there.
Yeah, that was... but you know what? Like, nerdily enough, it was actually really fun because I learned a lot. And I learned about this article, and I'm like, I can't believe this guy published this. This is some tea. I'm talking about the book, Cooper. Like, and so I couldn't believe it. And I just had to read it. And it's only a page, which is this is an easy, quick read. And it's like salacious. And then it's beautiful at the end because everything comes together. I'm like, oh my God.
So, I love that he put his name on the bottom of the chart. Who's the manager? Cooper.
Yep.
It's me.
Who's the behavior? J.D. Cooper.
That's actually a good point because Ogden Lindsley and all of his students wanted to make sure everybody in the learning process got credit because learning doesn't just happen from one person or just the teacher and the person. There's a whole group. There's a community. It takes a village to raise the child and to help the child learn. So that's why they have all these labeled blanks so that everybody can get credit.
I like that. I love that Cooper's like age 52. So just prepared, guys. Be prepared for age 52.
So, Jared, I'll do a very, very, very brief summary, but then please feel free to add in any details you think are relevant. And then I would love it if you walked us through this chart with a little more detail. So we've got Cooper, who is feeling a little down on himself because his private thoughts about his family feel like they're all very negative and destructive rather than positive and loving. So he says, I want to change this behavior, which is great. We should all be saying such things. If we want to make a change, great, let's make a change. He looks for, okay, what are the classes of sort of destructive inners, which he calls them, so his thoughts. And they are self-pity, which is when he starts thinking about how he hates doing the dishes or actions for the greater good of the family, taking the trash out, I'm guessing. I have a lot of those after I read that. I said, oh, yeah, dishes. Agitation at his mother-in-law, which is a very early 90s concern, I think people had.
Specific.
Very specific. And then non-wife thoughts.
You missed the also mad that he has to be the taxi for his children. I would love to see that.
That's a tough one. And so he said, I'm going to chart how often is this happening? So that seemed to be a little less about the sort of doing the timings. He's just sort of trying, how often do I have these thoughts? And as he says at the end, in his own self-validity or social validity section, I will quote, I was not pleased with the outcome of self-recording alone. So just noting how many times he had these thoughts didn't change how often he had the thoughts. So he said, I'm going to do an intervention, which will be, I will do timings on thinking positive thoughts and loving thoughts, like I'm glad I married this woman, or I love you, son. And he would just time them, and then he would chart them on his graph. And also he kept doing track of how often he had the positives, how often he had the negatives. And after about 9 interventions where he did these timings, he noticed he was just having a lot more positive thoughts and found the intervention to be a roaring success.
Without having to pay for a marriage
counselor. So, Jared, when we look at Cooper's kind of acceleration chart here, can you sort of hone us in on the sections we should be looking at? Like, what are we seeing? Because it's certainly not like your typical XY graph where you'd be like percentage of negative to positive thought. He's not doing that. So what are we looking at? What are the pieces that we should be paying attention to as we go back to this article?
Okay, so first thing that you want to do is you look at that bottom part. You see that everything is happening at the bottom half of the chart, right? So that means that these are all-day counts. He's counting all day how many times these behaviors occur. And we can see, if we look over, we could just see those X's are like super high. Those are the behaviors we want to decrease. And those dots are not nearly as high. So those are the behaviors that he wants to increase. So when we see more X's and fewer dots, we got a problem. So that's him just recording with no intervention. And I think this is really important to note. You have thoughts and feelings. You can count them. We may not know when thoughts and feelings end, but we know when they begin. So we can count every time they begin, and then we can add them up, and then we can place them on the standard acceleration chart, right? And that's what he did. He counted every day for they put 16 hours because that's usually the amount of time per waking day. So he counted how many times these behaviors occurred. Once he got to his intervention, what he did is this thing called 1 minute timings, where for 1 minute, he thinks and he counts. I have a clicker that I use that like is a counter, and you might use that. So you think, okay, I love my wife. I love my kid.
Click.
I'm happy I married her.
Click.
Exactly. That's 3 already. So within 1 minute, you do a 1 minute timing, and then you, on that top part of the chart, you counted how many times he got there, how many clicks he did in that 1 minute. And over time, the clicks increased. Every day it got easier to give more and more thoughts and feelings that were desirable. And
so
when
the top part for like treatment then?
Yeah, the top part is the 1 minute timing.
Yeah.
You see that line?
But like if it wasn't Cooper, like it was someone else.
Yeah.
Like we're looking at something else, that would be where your treatment
Yeah, well,
like,
it's on the top part of the chart, so that it means that we're counting 1 minute because that little line right there is our timing bar. It's telling us we counted for 1 minute, right? And then the dots, you go all the way up. You see they're a little bit below the 50 line.
Yeah.
So we're determining how many times that happened. The bottom half of the chart, you can't see the line, but it's over by the 0.001. And if you look all the way to the right, there's a little 16. Letting you know that's 16 hours. So that's the waking day. So that's the line.
That's why they barred out the bottom, because theoretically he's sleeping.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense now. That always confused me. When I see that little line, I'm always like, I'm done. I don't know what's happening.
So
right
the
here.
verticality has more to do with the length of the timing, correct?
Yes, because it's count per minute. So when you're going up, you're having, when you're at the 1, it's 1 minute, and then you go a little bit higher, it's 30 seconds, and blah, blah, blah. As you go down, you get longer. 0.5 is 2 minutes, and you go further and further.
All right, so that was his intervention. Oh, sorry, Diana, go.
Just to make sure I'm good. So like each of these days is measuring 16 hours of data, but it only says like 0.03. But is that per a certain amount of time? Am I misunderstanding?
So you can't really have so you can't really have 0.03 per minute, right? Because behavior is per minute. But if you look over on the right, you can kind of count. It could be once per 16 hours if it was on that little line right there. A little bit higher, there's 8 hours, so you could be once per 8 hours. Does that make a little bit more sense? You could use that axis to kind of determine how many.
Yeah.
So how will you know which axis to look at?
You can do math and only look at the left axis.
Let's not do math. I'm just kidding.
I'm just kidding.
You can look at the right axis. It says count period floors.
Yeah.
And you can just look at how many minutes you were counting and how many times it happened per minute. You just say it happened once per 16 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So
I mean, that's pretty good if you only have one negative thought per 16 hours.
Yeah, they might all be about your mother-in-law too.
Right? I mean, he only hit so if I'm looking at it, he had one negative thought per 5 hours that second day on that successive calendar day, and the first one he had one every hour. Ooh, cool.
Wow.
Is that right? Am I right?
Yeah, so when the X is below the timing bar, that means 0.
Okay.
So he had 0. So as soon as he started the intervention, he jumped down to 0 negative thoughts.
Wow.
Yeah, I totally see that part.
I see that one too.
Correct.
Okay, cool.
We're there. Oh my gosh, I just did it. And by the way, I'm doing a bad job in my class.
Well, now you're going to
But
do
now
better.
I'm going to kill it.
Don't tell anybody, Jackie. They'll never know.
Okay, cool. Thank you. That was really helpful.
I'm a whole new person.
So, Jared, typically when you're looking at a standard acceleration chart, I mean, you can get fancy like Cooper and have sort of your longer counts, also your shorter counts, and your time. You sort of put it all on there, all on one chart. Like the same with like if I were doing different channels, could I do the same thing? If here's my C say versus my C write or copy, I guess it would be kind of a copy
you could
response
put
there.
multiple behaviors or behaviors on the chart, but after you stop using those symbols, you want to describe what symbols you're using. So if you wanted to make a triangle for a different learning channel, then you would describe that in a little legend on the side, like, oh, I wanted to see right over here. So you kind of, if you add more, you describe more on the chart, but you can literally put all the behaviors side by side on the chart and really see the function of your behavior in total and compare it. This is a way to actually compare across environments, across behaviors, across people. It's incredible. And it's a way that I think that we should move to.
I wonder what happened on day 98.
Yeah.
It's like 0, 0, 0, and it's like, wow!
His mother-in-law came to visit.
Yeah.
And he had to do 3 soccer games that day.
And it was trash day.
No, and the dishes were like piled up from the party they had the night
And
before.
there
It
was
was
a hot
bad.
soccer mom.
Bad.
Yeah, but think about that. Like, he probably knows, he charted and he knows what happened that day.
Yeah.
And because, like, a lot of times we don't know what's causing our thoughts and feelings.
Yeah.
When people chart their inner behavior, they become more aware of what is the cause of those thoughts and feelings, these antecedents. So a lot of times in these inner behavior research articles that you'll read, you'll be like, oh, I didn't know why I was so angry, but once I started charting them, I was able to pinpoint or I was able to detect every single instance that was causing the problematic thought and feeling.
That's cool.
So, and Jared, like you were saying, these are great. These are powerful. These can tell us so much information. But that just brings me back to, I think, a question we kind of started with. If standard acceleration charts are so great, why do most of us not use them in the field? I mean, do you have a kind of a theory? I don't know if there's an answer exactly.
Yeah, well, I mean, So my theory, definitely most people don't know about them, and they're not taught because they took the standard acceleration chart off the task list. Maybe there's one question on the exam. So there's very little reason as to why people feel like they need to learn them. And then there's also like, now you may understand how powerful these could be, and that we might want to have everybody know them and have everybody be using them. But if you think about it, I asked Dr. Cabina about this question, and he said, if you think of it from a systems perspective, what would have to change in all of behavior analysis for people to learn? They would have to change the books. They would have to change the training. All of the professors would have to learn how to be able to be fluent charters. There would need to be incredible change within the system of applied behavior analysis to be able to implement this with everybody and have everybody learn it. So is the system willing to make that change, or is it easier to just keep going?
We'd have to chart to know what it is, I think, and then we could.
Yeah.
No, I completely hear you there, Jared. I think one of the other things that I found fascinating is, at least at BABA, and again, a conference is one of those funny things of you go to a conference and all the talks, or many of the talks, are sort of around a certain theme. And it's hard to know whether they're around that certain theme because this is the most important theme for the group that's at that conference. It's the most important for the field at large, and that just happens to be the conference you're in, or it's just a fluke in terms of like who was available to come to a talk. There's a lot of factors. But I certainly felt that at least at BABA, there were so many great talks on precision teaching, on the standard acceleration chart. And for someone who is increasingly just very disappointed with sort of how the special education field doesn't seem to be in all places using some of the technologies that we have all this research to support switching to, I was sort of hoping that maybe this was like a sea change moment, that there are more and more people, at least in the field of behavior analysis, if not special education, who are interested in learning about the standard acceleration chart, who are reaching out to kind of leaders in the field of precision teaching, like you have done. I mean, you're in the middle of it now. Is there a bigger trend that you're seeing, or is it just some people like it, some people don't care or don't know about it? I mean, what do you think?
I think it really comes with, in the field of behavior analysis, we have been terrible at advertising everything.
Truth.
Advertising ourselves, what we do, how we do it, and how well it can be done. So I think that in precision teaching, it's similar. So I have begun advertising with short form videos, like max 3 minutes, explaining what happened. Like I have a video on all of the Cooper stuff where I show the chart, I explain it, I break it down, I spill the tea, and it's easy to really get into. The response requirement is not so high. And when we share stuff like that, thanks to social media, I think it makes it a little bit easier to grasp. We can't use the same methods that they've been using for 30, 40, 50 years because clearly they aren't working. So we need to use the precision teaching way of stop and change and use different methods. And I think one of those is social media. And I see that people are using it to not only talk about the chart, but talk about workshops, we have a precision teaching conference called the Standard Celeration Society Conference that's every year that I love. And there's like incredible articles. We talked about inner behavior in the actual journal Nature. They charted fetal movements, and you can actually measure and determine when the baby is going to be born by the fetal movements via the standard acceleration chart. Like, that's incredible.
Wow.
So, I mean, when we talk about these things, it spreads it out and it becomes fascinating. People are interested. So I think that word of mouth is no longer snail mail and rotary dial phone calls.
I mean, you're right. It was really cute to read, I think, the Binder article and Lindley's article, and just sort of seeing in precision teaching, I think, for the pro of sort of how it was done with like the groups getting together and studying together and sharing with each other and making these databases, it really did feel like a new model and a new technology that was maybe like 40 years too early in terms of the ways they tried to share that information. Like, we're not going to publish, we're going to have a database. How we make that database, I don't know, magnetic tape. I mean, whatever the means was, it wasn't really feasible in the same way. I think they even mentioned
microfiche.
I think they even mentioned, like you were saying, Jared, I think they even mentioned that idea of like sharing it through other electronic media. as like, wouldn't this be great if we could do that back in when they were publishing in those articles in the 90s? So it seems like the time is weirdly now, even though this is an old old procedures and these are old technologies. Like now is the time to actually use a lot of the means of sharing that information. It's kind of finally come to fruition.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And we need to capitalize on it. I mean, imagine if you can just go into, well, they call it the behavior bank, but you can go into this thing and see what's the acceleration or what's the line that I need to match to be able to have good learning for my students. What do they do? These things were happening so fast and they were learning so much. By the time you publish it, it might be outdated. It might have been so long ago. I mean, I'm about to come out with a chapter in a book about precision teaching. I wrote that like 2 years ago. And now I have such a better understanding. I'm like, man, I wish I had another crack at it. So these things take so much time. Now is the time where we can really spread the information quickly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I know we're kind of already in the middle of it a little, but we should probably officially move into the dissemination station.
We're here.
We made it. Yay. So, Jared, what's kind of next for the standard Celeration chart? Because as much as, I mean, you're probably often speaking to an audience. We clearly wanted to learn more. We were excited to meet you in person, to get to talk with you. We wanted to hear more about this. So we're probably an outlier in terms of like how easy it is to get people to want to learn about the standard Celeration chart. I mean, what do we as a field need to do if we want to continue this forward movement, if we want to make sure that this gets into new environments where the standard Celeration chart and precision teaching could be of real direct benefit? I mean, like, what are some of the steps that still need to be done? Are there still questions that need to be answered that are concerning or that are barriers, or is it more just a matter of once people see it and once people see the results, they tend to be I don't want to say believers like it's a religious movement, but that sense of they see the value in it.
I think it's definitely something that if people use it to chart their own behavior, you will immediately become one of those believers. Like I came up to y'all and I was like, have you heard about this chart? You know what I mean? It does feel like a cult in a way, but what's important is like, it's so significantly like game changing that you want to scream to the heavens or whatever. So that's one of the things. Also, more research, I think sharing it. One of the things that I recently found out, like, and I always want to make sure I say this and I haven't said it yet, so I need to say it now. Celeration is a non-discriminatory measure. Meaning you can use it and it won't discriminate across race, across socioeconomic status, or anything like that. We don't have a measure in education that is like that, but Celeration is. And I just found it through doing some research in some really old books. So when we understand that we can use this to really help individuals be like going into special education without being placed over proportionally into those special education or different disability identities, then we can really kind of say, this is a tool that is ethically important to use, and not doing so can be kind of unethical. So sharing it with everybody and like kind of showing people, having them being able to experience what's going on, like looking at things like YouTube videos, TikTok, Instagram, that's where people kind of are online already. And if they can be able to get a little chunk and get a little taste and then try to figure out where to go more, I think that's important. Also, research is important. So you got to do the research and read the research. But I also think that the BACB needs to turn their behinds around and put it back on the task list and kind of prop it up. I mean, I could go on about them, but I will not. I'll just say, hey, y'all, stop and change.
There's still the 6th edition. There's still time.
There's still time.
Right? So I love what you just said. And to build upon that, to think about like we often measure behavior via per opportunity. Right? But that's a weighted measure in a not good way, because who's providing that opportunity, and are opportunities being provided equally across individuals, circumstances, etc.? No. So what are you really measuring when you're measuring per opportunity?
Exactly. There's two specific ceilings that you place on your learners when you measure per opportunity. There's a teacher imposed opportunity. How many times per minute or whatever can they respond when they have to wait for you? And then two, the measurement imposed ceiling, where if you're using percent correct, you can only get 100%. So you can't see the difference between accurate performance that's low number and accurate performance that's high number. Shaq can make one free throw and be 100%, and you could think that he's an amazing free throw shooter. But that is not true. Sorry for all the basketball references. I'm a basketball player. I had to put them in.
It's good. And then also the other thing is my ears perked up when you said, oh, you can use a lot of different colors on your chart. Because Jackie will know, I guess Rob also knows because he's married to me, but every year.
And you're always charting. I mean,
I'm always charting, but beginning of the school year, I always buy myself a new set of like pens in every color, and I use those all the time in my notebooks that I write in. So the idea of being able to then chart my own data using all my different color pens gets me very excited. So there might be other listeners out there like me.
Yeah, like Ogden Lindsley, RIP to the boy, the OG. He would love to see people's charts marked up. So you would make him proud by marking up that chart, putting a whole lot of behavior data on it. You would be smiling from above.
Very good.
All right. Well, Jared, I think you convinced me back when we talked again, but just reading these articles and continuing, like, I'm very on board with precision teaching. I feel very behind. My background was originally special education, and I feel like I've sort of I haven't missed the boat in terms of being able to get, because I can still learn about it. I can still use. I'm not like, well, no, I learned 5 ways to do things, and those are the only 5 ways. Now, part of the show is getting to learn new things and speak to other folks who have different backgrounds, perspectives that they can share that I can then learn more. So for folks like me who said, yes, I want to keep going on this journey, I know you've got your videos, so please make sure to plug where I can see kind of these bite-sized videos, which, thinking about it, as much as I'm not a big social media person, the idea of, you know what, I got to see real quick an example. What a great way to I have it in my hand. I can see an example real fast. It's not going to take me too long. Rather than I got to find the book, which I don't have with me. So I'm done with this process. But, I'd love to plug where you have your videos, and then other resources too, if you think there are other ones that folks who are sort of just getting going on their journey would want to look at.
Okay, perfect. So on Instagram, I'm Jared Van _ JARED VAN _. And then on TikTok, literally, if you search precision teaching, you'll see my face. But my TikTok is Jared V _. Alternatively, I would recommend there's 3 books that you can select from to go ahead and learn about precision teaching. One is the Precision Teaching book by Richard Cabina and Kristen Urich. Another one is Weaving Love and Science into Educational Practice by Clay M. Starlin. Amazing book as well. And then the third one that I would highly recommend is Precision Teaching, A Practical Science of Education, edited by Norris G. Herring, Margaret S. White, with Malcolm D. Neely. And online for free, you can get the chart book. You can look up the chart book. There's a PDF that kind of describes it. And I would also say that online, if you look up Octave Innovation, they do amazing jobs tutoring people and showing them in workshops how to use the precision teaching formula and how to use the standard acceleration chart. Octave Innovation is amazing. I've learned some stuff from them as well. So I would highly recommend if you feel like I need to be in person, I need to learn from a person, in real time, there's the place to go.
Oh, wow. Okay. Last question, Jared. How do I set up a TikTok account? I don't know how to do this. So I think I can stumble through that. You tell me off air.
Yep.
Everybody's
Definitely.
giggling now. They're like, oh, Rob,
we're
so
too old.
And then real quick, I want to say that in my Instagram, I'll say real quick, if you go to my profile and you swipe to the right 2 times, there's a little book and it's a guide. And I have a whole guide on precision teaching that has like 25 videos that are all collected in order so that you can really just scroll through and learn. There's a whole one on inner behavior, which we talked about with Cooper. So look to those guides and those will really help you kind of know really quickly.
Oh, that is awesome. What a great way to just have some examples and some descriptors in your pocket at all times. That's excellent. Well, Jared Van, thank you so much for coming on the show today, for teaching us so much about Celeration charts and inners and going through Cooper's fun personal experiments, and then having so many awesome resources that are available. And for listeners, you didn't get to see it. Jared had all those books ready to go when sharing.
Yep. And I didn't give my email. My email is jared.van92@gmail.com.
Excellent. Okay, and we'll have all that on our like guest page and in the show notes too, so folks can just link right to there after they're done listening. If they haven't already seen them and they're just like, "Yep, it's nice to hear Jared talk again." I'm glad that Rob learned something too. Well, I certainly enjoyed learning more about the standard Celeration chart. Diana, how about you?
Yeah, it was a good time.
It was a good time, but you know what would make it even better?
What?
I'm going to start tracking latency to answer questions on my standard Celeration chart. I think it would be even better if we wrap things up with some pairings.
All right. That means it's my turn to talk, and it is the pairing section of the show in which I tell you some other episodes you might want to circle back to if you enjoyed this episode. So we don't have a ton of backdated episodes that kind of relate to this particular topic, but we have a few that I think might be relevant. One of them certainly is episode 230, in which the three of us, did our take on precision teaching.
We did our best. You might want to listen to this episode, and then you could go back and listen to that episode, because Jared obviously does a fantastic job of laying it all out there and understanding how to look at the Celeration chart. So you might want to start here, then you could go back. We talk about some specific articles that utilize precision teaching and Celeration charts in episode 230. I also thought that episodes, it's almost like they're not two-parters, but I feel like they go together a lot, which are episodes 111, in which we discuss the use of behavior analytic language and behavior analytic terminology. That's relevant here in that we've added some terminology specific to SCCs that you could, think about when you're listening to that episode. And then episode 113, in which we discuss visual inspection. So that's also talking about visual displays of data, but from maybe a little bit more of the traditional ABA perspective, but you might find that one relevant. And then I added in episode 173, which is a two-parter, but this is the second one, and it's specifically about from practice to research. And I think that thinking about precision teaching and Celeration charts fits in nicely with this topic, because there has been so much practice in this area. And as we discussed with Jared, they're doing a little bit of catch up on the research side, because everyone's been so focused on just using this as an effective tool. Now we want to see how we're going to sort of get that piece in the effectiveness literature. So those were my recommendations. And then, as always, I always like to recommend a snack to go with the episode. And so since this episode took us back to the 90s, I have a very 90s snack for us to enjoy. Jolt Cola and Slim Jims?
No, you're awfully close, though. It is Dunkaroos and Orbit's drink. Remember those things?
Yuck. No, thank you.
Dunkaroos were little like kangaroo cookies, and you dip them in like a frosting. They were delicious. And then Orbit's drink had like these jelly balls floating in it, which is not Rob's favorite.
No.
Neither of those products are in existence any longer, do I think?
No.
So that's your snack for pairings.
Okay.
Please enjoy.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Diana, for pairings. And that brings us to the end of our episode. We want to say another big thank you to Jared Van for coming on the show. We're going to have links to all the places you can find him online in the show notes as well as on our webpage. And I want to make sure to thank a couple other people, including you, the listener. And how can we say thank you? Well, by giving you lots of other fun opportunities to check out more ABA Inside Track content. You can find us on all the socials as ABA Inside Track. You can go to our website, abainsidetrack.com, to find links to all of our previous episodes, links to the articles discussed on this episode, as well as to purchase CEs for almost all of our episodes. And if you want even more ABA Inside Track content, why not check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/ABA Inside Track, where you can subscribe subscribe at the $5 or up level to get access to voting on our listener choice episodes, voting on our book clubs, and to get discounts on CEs as well as free CEs for our listener choice episodes. We do one of those per season. And if you want to subscribe at an even higher level, you can get access to all of our book club podcasts. You probably heard our Supervision September book club podcast on the book Results by Dr. John Austin, which came out free for everybody. They're not always available until about a year out. But if you subscribe at that level, you can get 2 CEs for listening to our book clubs at no additional charge, just as a way of saying thanks for your additional subscribing and patronage. Again, that's patreon.com/ABA Inside Track. And if you just want to write in with any thoughts, you can always do that at abainsidetrack@gmail.com. Some final thanks. Big thanks to Dr. Jim Carr for recording our intro, outro music, Kyle Sturry for recording our interstitial music, and of course, Dan Thabit of the Podcast Doctors for his amazing editing work. And so he doesn't have to edit this in later, here's your second secret code word. It is frequency. FREQUENCY. Another special guest code word so related to using your standard Celeration chart, as well as other times. I'm sure we all use frequency measures. But for today, you just need to remember it as a code word, frequency. We'll be back next week with another fun-filled episode. But until then, keep responding. Bye!
Bye!